So I would have to say that it is just a very narrative style. There's stories in every piece that I make, or at least I try and create stories and question. What influences me for my style is sort of old folklore and songs and Cornish folklore, and the pieces of fabric that I find sometimes narrate what's going to be illustrated. I usually sort of unload all of my bags of fabric. I get my fabric from auction houses, mostly car boots. It's all secondhand, and I love kind of the bits and the stains and the bits of, you know, history, the kind of handled quality of all the fabrics that I get. So I kind of unload them, and my studio becomes this swamp, this chaotic swamp of fabrics, and I wade through and sort of pick out bits that I feel would work for the piece that I'm working towards. So I start with a linear line drawing, and then I sort of figure out what colours I'm going to use and wade through, pick up the bits of fabric, and then kind of spread them out in this sort of feast of bits of fabric of, you know, different ages, different weights, different colours, different qualities. Some may be kind of ripped or bruised or stained, and then I create my pieces from that fabric. And it's funny because I sort of lose myself in it, if I'm honest. It becomes unplanned, and it becomes very instinctive and something that I don't feel like I have a lot of control over, but yeah, that's sort of the process. And then I start stitching. Because I feel like with my work, yes, it's embroidery and yes, it's textiles, but I think because it straddles so many different, you know, it straddles the fine art community, the contemporary craft community, the textiles and illustration community, and I'm in a really fortunate position in that I can sort of contact and be involved in many different fields. At the moment, so I've got shows coming up with a woman called Ali Corder, who is an illustrator and fine artist. I've had sort of group shows with potters, with my mother and my grandmother, who again, she's a toy maker, an automata toy maker, and my grandmother's a ceramicist. So as a child I wanted to find something that was creative, a creative outlet that was different from what my grandmother and my mother were doing. So I kind of came across textiles and fabric in that way, and I started cutting up bits of fabric that I could find, anything I could get my hands on, and making dolls. So I made lots of different dolls, some more successful than others, which my mum she's kept all of them. Some of them are awful. But yeah, so that was the start of it, and then it just kept going, it kept growing. I grew up in Nancledra, and I went to a primary school there that only had 60 students when I started, so it was just tiny. So there was a lot of freedom. We'd sort of fill our pockets with cinnamon grahams and go out and not come back until after lunch, and then put some more in our pockets and go back out. It was just sort of, we'd have to make up our own stories and make our own toys, and we were sort of running wild, which was lovely. And also, I guess, my parents came from London, and they moved to Cornwall sort of, I think for a slightly cheaper life actually, and to be able to buy some land and make the art that they were making. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to be as creative as I have been.